today's town hall meeting with our local legislative representatives. My name is Randy Groves. I am a Eugene City Councilor for Ward 8, which is southwest Eugene, and I have the privilege of being your moderator for today. I think I'm hearing. Can we turn the volume up a little bit? Before we get started, though, I would like to thank Lane County for opening up their facility here with Harris Hall, and the Lane County Sheriff's Office for keeping us all safe during this event. And now I'd like to introduce our legislators, and I'm just going to go down the list that I have here before me, and it's in no particular order. First up is Representative Nancy Nathanson from House District 13. Representative Charlie Conrad from House District 12. Representative Paul Holvey, House District 8. Representative Julie Fahey, who is now Speaker of the House, from House District 14. Congratulations. Senator Manning, Senate District 7. And last but certainly not least, Senator Floyd Przansky from Senate District 4. Okay, I would now like to turn this over to our legislators for some opening remarks. And if we could go from my left to right, I guess that'd be your right to left, and just give some opening thoughts on this.
All right. Thank you, Randy. I knew I wasn't supposed to sit to his left. You're right, because I'd be first. But anyway, I'm Senator Floyd Przansky. As Randy says, I represent Senate District 4. Senate District 4, based on the redistricting, now includes about half of Eugene, all of Springfield, and a little rural areas in between I-5 and the Territorial Highway, skirting Crestwell and down to the tip of Cottage Grove. My assignments, I still serve as this chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I serve on the Environment and Natural Resources Committee in the, which is now called the Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. Also on the Human Services, and have some other assignments besides that. But those are my current sitting assignments. Also the Conduct Committee for both the Senate and the Joint Committee. The session went very fast, as you can imagine, with the 35 days only. We did get out, and technically, I guess it was in 35 days and a half, because we left in the, finished out in the evening on the Thursday prior to the Sunday that we had to be out. There was a lot of stuff that took place during that period of time. You're going to hear a lot of from each of us as to some of our different perspectives. There was, from my perspective, being the longest serving member in the legislature, one of the more collegial sessions that we've had since early days of the 2000s. I do believe that the leadership did a very good job in getting everyone to be active in the session and giving everyone the ability to be heard. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Senator Manning.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Senator James Manning. My district includes north and west Eugene over to the beautiful city of Bonita. My committee assignments include Senate Judiciary, which I am proud to be a part of that, been there a long time with the chair, Senate Human Services Committee, Senate Rules Committee, and I am the chair of the Senate Committee on Veterans, Emergency Management, Federal and World Affairs. I have to agree with Senator Przansky with respect to the Senate side. It went very well. Few hiccups, unfortunately. We left a lot of good things on the floor. Wasn't able to get them across. Some technicalities and stuff that arose at the last minute, and we just ran out of time. However, the things that we were able to get done, I think it's going to improve the lives of all Oregonians because there was a lot of good things out there, and Lane County will benefit from this session as well. With that, I will pass it over to the new Speaker of the House, or do you want to go from the end, Madam Speaker?
Just keep going this way, I think.
All right.
Thank you, Senator. So I'm Julie Fahey, State Representative for House District 14, which is West Eugene, everything west of Chambers, Bethel, and then on out to Veneta. And as of March 7th, I'm the new Speaker of the Oregon House. So we were able to do a leadership transition at the end of session, which I'm really grateful for because that means I get all of this year to prepare for the 2025 session. So I was just talking about, hiring up staff and doing some agenda setting and really having the chance to get up to speed before we rush back into session again. So prior to that, I served as the majority leader, which meant I led the Democratic caucus specifically inside the building and on the campaign trail. And so now as Speaker, it's overseeing the whole of the House. So the legislative session was, as these folks have said, was 35 days. And so I really want to emphasize that it was pretty demanding and intense. Normally the way the legislature is structured, we have a long session in the odd-numbered years, which is about 5.5 months. That was last year. That's where we do the vast majority of our policy and budgeting work. We set our budget for the next few years. And then in the even-numbered years, we have a 35-day short session. And so we, the Oregonian's editorial after the session was a short session delivers long session results. And that feels like a summary. We knew we needed to be successful. We needed to be very focused. I often say if you have 40 priorities, you don't have any priorities. So headed into the session, our priorities were housing and homelessness, passing a major housing and homelessness package, which we were able to do, and as well as behavioral health and Measure 110 reform, which we were also able to do. And then on a surprise level, we were actually able to get campaign finance reform done and finally impose limits on. So that was, no one really thought we were going to be able to do that in a short session, including myself. But I was one of the lead negotiators on that work and was able to finally get folks to agreement. So those were the big highlights. We obviously did a lot of other things as well on healthcare and, consumer protections and other things. But we knew that the session wouldn't be a success if we exited the session without major action on housing and homelessness and on behavioral health care. So I'm proud of that work that we did, on housing supply. We continued the work to remove barriers to building more housing in this state. That is the root cause of our problems. We are over 100,000 homes short to meet the need. So we sort of made investments in local infrastructure so that local governments have what they need to build water and wastewater to support new housing. On homelessness, we invested in continuing some of the good work we've been doing on building shelters and navigation centers and Project Turnkey. And I'm sure we'll talk more about behavioral health and public safety. I'll hand it over to Representative Nathanson.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Nathanson. I represent House District 13. That's North Eugene. I was elected in 2007, and before that I was on the Eugene City Council for 12 years, and so I know some of you, including Councilor Groves, very well from that. I am currently chairing the House Committee on Revenue. I'm also the House Chair for the Joint Committee on Information Management and Technology, or the IT Committee. I also sit on the Transportation Committee. I'd like to mention just a few things about the short session. It was a sprint, of course, with a maximum of 35 days allowed by our state's constitution. We had 170 House bills, 96 Senate bills. Of all of those bills, 115 passed, made it through the finish line. So that's less than half, of course, but that's a lot of work that we got done in that short session. Of that 115, 111 of 115 were passed with bipartisan support. And so I'd like to speak for just another minute about bipartisanship. In my committee was assigned 20 bills. 14 of those were voted out of committee and 11 ultimately passed. 6 were committee bills, and of the seven other bills had Republican chief co-sponsors or single sponsor. So the Revenue Committee has always been handled as a very much a bipartisan type of collaborative committee. And of my two bills that both passed this session, I had two priority bills on the House. Each of us was allowed a maximum of two. Both of my bills passed, and both of my bills had Republican chief co-sponsors. And I'm really pleased that we're going to be making some headway now in reining in the power and the money stream of the pharmacy benefit managers who have been interfering with prescription drugs and responsible for the closing of numerous pharmacies. 35 pharmacies closed last year again. So that bill achieved success, and the other bill that achieved success that we might talk about a little bit later is a bill that was in response to the notice that the University District Hospital in Eugene, Eugene's only hospital, was closing. I passed a bill with the support of everybody at the table here today, pitching in to help, and we'll be able to see how we can reshape the delivery of urgent care or necessary care to people in Lane County. And I'm hoping that the successes here can be replicated around the state, because we're going to see some new innovative approaches.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for being here. I'm excited to do this again. August was a lot of fun, and I always enjoy doing this, and I like being up here with my fellow regional delegation. We get along really well. We don't always agree on the policy side, but in terms of actual people and working together, I really enjoy working with them and having the conversations. So again, Charlie Conrad, I represent House District 12. And House District 12 is Eastern Lane County. So my district runs from the Lane-Douglas line, Crestwell Cottage Grove. It includes the South Hills of Eugene, goes just north into Lynn County, so Coburg, Junction City as well, and then up to the Cascades. So it includes, Lowell, Oak Ridge, and a lot of unincorporated areas in that region. And my first short session, again, going into it, not really knowing how is this really going to compare to the long session, it was good. There was a lot of bipartisanship. I felt like personally I had my feet underneath me a little bit better. I didn't have to worry about where the bathrooms were. I knew who to call if I had a question, and some of those basic things. So it was nice to be able to focus on some of the legislation and to have gone through that interim period to develop legislation. So as Rep. Nathanson said, we were each allowed two bills. I had two bills. Both are sitting on the governor's desk right now waiting for signature, so I'm excited about that. But one of those bills is on there only because of Rep. Nathanson before the Revenue Committee and her hard work helping me out in getting that passed. So there's a lot of bipartisan work that was done, and the key bills that Rep. Fahey talked about, that was a lot. There was a lot of work behind the scenes in a short period of time by a lot of people to bring those very complex issues to something that we could all agree on and to something that we could all support. For the most part, I can't say they all passed 100%. There might have been some no votes on a few of those, but to bring all that together was really remarkable. And to be part of that process, whatever my small role in the whole process was, really enjoyed that. And it was beneficial, and it was a great learning experience for me to be part of that. One of the bills that really I am proud to have supported was not my bill, but it's redoing the stalking laws, the modernizing stalking laws that came through Rep. Mannix and through, I think Rep. Hartman was probably on that. It's, again, a bipartisan bill to update our stalking laws was critical. So those are some of the things that we were able to accomplish. We've got some huge things, but there were some really good things that don't always get the headlines that are very important for victims, for people, and I was proud to be able to be part of that process. So thank you.
I'm Paul Holvey. I am the representative for District 8, which is basically west of I-5 and east of Chambers. On the northern side is Interstate 105 as the boundary, and then Floyd sort of described the south kind of goes down the west side of I-5 or west side of 99 down to Cottage Grove almost, and a little bit to the west there, and comes back into town around Chambers Street. It has a lot of jogs in it, but a lot of rural area out there in Fox Hollow and Ham Road and the like. I also chair my committee assignments. I I chair the Business and Labor Committee, and I'm co-chair of the Ways and Means Capital Construction Subcommittee. I also serve on the Natural Resources Subcommittee for Ways and Means, and also on the full Ways and Means Committee. And I also had a real short job of co-chairing the Joint Committee on Measures and Ballot Titles. So we had 3 ballot titles and measures that'll be coming to the voters, and one of them is ranked choice voting. The other one is also looking at a commission to set salaries, which is kind of an important thing for us as legislators. It's very difficult for us to set salaries for ourselves, if not nearly impossible sometimes. So that's been a long time coming. And then we also have a bill that's going to authorize the impeachment of statewide elected officials, which Oregon is one of the few states that doesn't have a process for doing that. So that is a part of what we did. You know, I know there'll be a little bit more time to talk about other things, but one of the bills that came through Business and Labor was the right to repair for electronic issues, cell phones and things like that. It's been a long time coming. We've had this bill in the legislatures, I think, since 2017 or 2018, and it came through on the Senate side this time. It basically gives people a little bit more ability to get their electronics fixed, to make sure that the manufacturers are supplying the parts and also the manuals to private independent fix-it places, and also for homeowners who think that they know how to fix those things. So that will be a good thing. We also had a bill that was a treasury divestment from coal companies for the state of Oregon. So those were a few of the things I just thought I'd say. So thank you for being here.
If I can have a quick redo, I forgot to say the committees that I was on, just for context for people. I realized I was the only one that forgot that. So just for context, I'm on the Judiciary Committee, Emergency Management, Vets, and General Government. That's all one committee. Behavioral Health and Healthcare, and then the Ways and Means Public Safety Subcommittee. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for what was a very productive session. I'm in my 4th year of my first term in office, and it has been a pleasure to watch this group of legislators work for us, and I feel very well represented by them. So my personal thanks, and I'm new to politics, but I've been in government for a long time. I'm your former fire chief here, so I have a lot of years of working very closely with some of these people and have great respect for them. With that said, we will now move into kind of the meat of why we're here, and that's the question and answer period. And we'll be shifting to questions from the audience. And if you have not already submitted questions, I would encourage you to submit a question, if you have one, and fill out a questionnaire card at the back in the sign-in table and hand it off to a staff member, so it can be brought up to me to be read to our representatives and senators. So with that, I'd like to go to the first question, and the way the questions are going to be posed, unless it specifically calls out a legislator in the question, I'm going to just throw it out to the group, and it'll be a jump shot now that we're in March Madness. So the first question, it's from Donovan Mack, and after closure of the ED at Peace Health University District, what remains to be done to ensure access to emergency health care services for people south of the Willamette River? And I'll add west of I-5.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll jump that one. I was really pleased that everyone here helped support the bill that we wrote with a stakeholder group. First, I'd like to talk about what did get done, so what we could see in the near term. developing within this year, and then what needs to happen beyond that. The bill that we passed does three things, basically. It provides one-time gap funding for the city of Eugene for an additional ambulance crew. It takes them longer because they're going at least 20 minutes farther to take people to Springfield rather than downtown. It's time, it's also patient offload time. They're waiting longer times to get the patient ready, prepared, and moved into the emergency department. When you change from 3 emergency departments in a metro area to just 2, and they were already crowded, you can imagine that this just exacerbates the crowding situation. So there's one-time funding for Eugene Springfield Fire EMS to have an additional ambulance crew. We hope that what I'm going to talk about in the next minute or so removes the need for that long-term going into the future. The second thing the bill does is it speeds up nurse licensing. It allows for provisional licensing. If there's a nurse who has an active license in good standing in another state, it enables an employer, a hospital, a clinic, a Lane County Public Health Office, anywhere, it allows an employer to hire that nurse on a provisional basis while their standards and credentials are being confirmed. Again, they have to be practicing in good standing in another state, but it allows them to get to work quickly in Oregon instead of waiting for months. Right now it's been reduced to weeks, but still we can't afford to wait weeks to fill positions. The third thing is we allocated money. The legislature, it's rare for something to make it through Ways and Means and get everything you ask for, but we got everything we asked for. We're fully funding an innovation fund so that Lane County Public Health will be doing an RFP, request for proposal process, an open process, but they're doing it on a speeded up basis. They expect the RFP to be out within a month or so. They hope that they can start granting awards by May or June. Those awards will go to innovative programs such as perhaps sort of like a triage. If someone has called 911, I don't want to discourage anyone from calling 911, but if you've called and it's determined quickly in those first critical 15 to 30 seconds that this is not immediately life-threatening, maybe what we do is have someone else talk to the person. How can we help you? What is it you need? Maybe we fund some paramedic or EMT crews to go to someone's house in a different type of emergency vehicle. It doesn't have to be a $250,000 ambulance. Maybe we have a mobile nurse practitioner. Maybe we have other ways of delivering care to people or bringing people to care. We're already in discussions with Lane Transit District, for example. So those are some of the things that you could see rolling out within this year. Beyond that, I think we need to be looking at some other things. The reimbursement model, of course, we can't change the federal or national health care system just from the state of Oregon, but we need to look at how urgent care facilities come to be. They're not currently licensed. We don't have a list of where they are. We should take a look at urgent care facilities. We need to look at workforce financial incentives, including signing bonuses, pay equity, and incentives to remain in the area. We should look at the certificate of need process. That right now is preventing perhaps the opening of some additional beds or additional clinics. We need to just check, do we still want this thing called certificate of need process? And there are some other things that we definitely could look at. But there's a list, and whoever I talked to previously last year is probably going to be getting a phone call or an email message from me. Let's talk again.
Thank you very much for that response, Rep. Nathanson. And it's not a moderator's job to jump in and editorialize, but in this case, I'll take the liberty of doing this briefly as someone who's worked in the fire and EMS field for a month short of 37 years in this community. We need to also declutter our emergency departments, and that's moving non-emergent treatment and case loads out of the hospital emergency departments. That's part of this next phase that we need to move forward with innovation. So thank you so much to all of you involved with this, and thank you, Rep. Nathanson, for leading the charge. The next question is from John Quilter. And this is there any movement to require and fund a required course in high school on personal finance covering such things as credit card use, mortgages, rental agreements, 401ks, the principles of investing early in life to take advantage of the power of compounding over time to build private retirement security outside the underfunded Social Security system?
I'll jump in on this one. Love it when people ask a question about something that, you know, is there a plan to do this? And we've already done it. So last year in 2023, in the long session, we passed Senate Bill 3, which requires students to complete a half credit of higher education, career path skills, and then 1 half credit of personal finance education as a requirement for a high school diploma. So, you know, that requirement is going to be rolled out, and obviously curriculum development and standards over the next few years. But definitely hear how important it is to make sure our young Oregonians are getting the education they need on the financial literacy side.
If I could add to that, thank you. It's really amazing. I've had interns, college, getting ready to graduate college, and didn't know how to address an envelope, nor did they know how to affix a postal stamp. This is very serious. We had a breakdown in education, basic education, for a long time now. Even to write a check, it's proven to be a challenge because they don't do that. The world has changed considerably, but you wonder that how are the future generations going to understand how to read the Declaration of Independence that's written in cursive? I think that we need to put more emphasis on educators to allow more of that learning in school, which we provided that funding for CTE programs and all of those other bases, but we have to let teachers teach.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is from Chris Cunningham. Is there a plan in place to monitor if the funds for housing are used properly?
So I'll jump in on this since it's housing, and that tends to be my area of expertise. So there were a number of different allocations of funding about housing in the session, and an even greater amount of funding last session in the long session, since that's when we do most of our budgeting. So I think the biggest piece of funding that we allocated for housing this session was for local infrastructure that I mentioned in my opening session. So for example, the city of Eugene is getting $6 million to fund water and wastewater infrastructure out in the Crow Road neighborhood, because that could be several hundred homes, but they didn't have the funding available to do some of that infrastructure piece. So we did make some direct allocations to cities around the state. I know the governor and the Department of Administrative Services are going to be watching very closely that funding and ensure that it does actually tie to housing outcomes in those cities. We also created a revolving loan fund, which is really interesting and innovative way to fund local infrastructure specifically for more moderate income housing. So local governments can apply to that fund, they can get funding to develop infrastructure for housing purposes, and then they pay the loan back with the property taxes that are generated from the development. So we seeded that revolving loan fund with $75 million, and I hope that it will, you know, continue for decades and sort of replenish those funds.
Next question is from Rob Zako. In the legislature is already working on a major transportation funding package for the 2025 session. We are hearing it will be about back to basics. What are the most important elements you want to see? How can I, as Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation, BEST, and other community leaders assist you in passing a package that serves all Oregonians well?
I'll start off. Do you want to go, Senator?
No, I was going to say, I thought this would be more for our revenue chair.
Yeah.
Transportation planning subcommittee.
You go first, Rep.
No, I'd like to hear you.
Okay. So I was just going to touch base real quick on some of that. For the folks in the cities in my district, we've already are having conversations about some of those transportation needs that they have. And some of it ties into the local economy. Some of it ties into housing needs. Some of it ties into just basic transportation. So some of it in Cresswell. Anybody that goes into Cresswell, if you're like me, you like the Cresswell Bakery, you go through that jog. Some of it, what City of Cresswell is trying to do is to redo that intersection as you go over the train tracks. But then there's also economic components to it as well. How do you enhance those storefronts along that way so that you got efficient transportation, you have storefronts, but a lot of semi-trucks and large vehicles also use that intersection. So they've been doing a lot of work, and I've been having conversations with them and trying to get to a point that when we get to the long session, we've got something that we can present, that we've got projects, we've got the numbers, we've got everything to go forward with that. City of Coburg is also having some transportation conversations regarding the new parcel of land, the 107 acres that they have on the east side of the I-5. So how can we work with that? How can we try to get some of that? So for the folks that I'm talking to, these are conversations that we're having right now. So for people that are encouraged about this, think about what that means. Think about what the needs would be. Think about what you can practically do to get before the legislature on a piece of paper that has the project scope, it's got the funding, any other funding needs. So if you need to do some braided funding other than just the state, if you need some federal allocations, if you need something else, have that prepared and have that get going and have those conversations and to see if there's a regional nexus. The other important thing that I always talk about, what else is out there? Does it impact housing? Does it impact emergency management, which is one of the areas particularly for Eastern Lane County? Always talking about emergency management and escape routes for the cities. How are we going to evacuate and how does that look like? So are there some other needs, other ways to help support and justify those transportation projects?
I'll take a turn and talk about this a little from a slightly different angle from sitting on the Transportation Committee. Part of the question was, what did I think, beyond back to basics, what would the most important elements be? First, you have to take care of what you have, right? So we have to make sure that our priorities for maintaining and improving are in place and sustainable. That includes making sure that all of our bridges are improved so that they can withstand a major earthquake. They have not all been improved with seismic upgrades, and that has to happen. So for me, that's one of the basics that has to be included. And secondly, I want to make sure that we are taking care of alternative forms of transportation because not everyone is driving a car. Young people had started to, the age and ability to get a driver's license is really changing. It was remarkable to me to read statistics a few years ago on young people not getting driver's licenses at the same rate as young people were 10 years before and 10 years before that. They are choosing not to drive a car and not even own a car. That means we need to make sure that facilities for biking and that public transportation are working. Public transportation needs a rethink. I'm not sure what it is we do about it, but we need to rethink it, modernize it, make it more attractive, easier, and ubiquitous. It won't literally be everywhere, but we need to expand it. And that includes rail. Some of you already know I am alarmed at the state of Washington's investment in ultra-high-speed ground transportation. We can't even call it rail because it could be maglev or some other technology. But they are willing to spend mega dollars on mega fast rail, and I'm concerned that that won't bring improvement to anyone in anything less than 20 or 30 years. And we need more, better, faster now. And I'm working on that. I just continue to be a thorn in the side on transportation for that.
Thank you very much. If I could just add one piece, I know I'm not supposed to do this again as moderator, but you don't have to invite me back, I guess. The point that Rep. Nathanson was making on our bridge system, you cannot get to one of the two remaining hospitals without traveling across a bridge. I guarantee you our emergency responders are thinking about that all the time. So thank you. Okay, our next question is from Lee and Susan Bliven II, emergency preparedness at LTC communities or lack of preparedness. Not sure what the question is.
Oh, let me jump in there at the end. I know the Blevins, we go a ways back, and they are very good advocates for people with disabilities and disability rights. It's good to see you again. Always a pleasure. You know, that is an ongoing issue, how we improve accommodations and how do we make things more accessible. It's something, it's a fight that's steady going on. We have incremental improvements throughout the system, housing, access to public accommodations, but in-home care is another quality of life issue that we continue to work on. We've seen, unfortunately, with Peace Health, their home care nurses now have, there is no agreement. I think that that's tragic, what they're doing. I will continue to speak out against that practice to include the way and the manner that they close the hospital here. As I understand, the CEO receives a truckload of money, and patient care seems to rely on the size of your purse. We have to reverse those trends, and we need to get patient care, patient-centered care, true patient-centered care back to those that are in need. In this case, those with disabilities are gaining access to public facilities and accommodations is an ongoing issue. But the in-house providers, healthcare providers, is a tremendous necessity that we need to draw more attention to, and that's a focus of mine. I intend to continue to do that, and I want to thank the Blevins for coming back and standing up, making sure that we're doing the right thing for everybody.
Rep. Conrad.
Thank you. So I'll answer this at two levels. The first one I'll be granular. We actually have a program that was approved, I think, in the 21 session. It's the Capital Improvement and Emergency Preparedness Program, and funding was issued out about $30 million in 22. So there are some programs that were pre-approved, authorized, are in progress, and they've extended that program to January 31st of 2024 in order to let those projects go to completion. It sounds like there was probably some supply chain issues, some those types of things. So there are some very specific programs out there. On the larger, broader scale, one of the things that the ice storm brought to my attention to really look at, and in the community meetings that I've been at, it's how localized that storm was and the localized intensity. And really what it comes down to, it is neighbors, right? It's the neighbors immediately next to you. Maybe you can walk across the street. Maybe you can get to neighbors a couple blocks away, depending on how thick a storm, an ice storm like that's going to be. But when we talk about some of these communities, some of these folks that need extra help, it's planning at that local level. It's planning at the county level so that we don't forget them, so that we know that they exist, and that we are doing our best to get out there and help them. Some of that will come from simply, hopefully we can get, backup generators to them. Hopefully we can get them some storage tanks for propane or whatever their heating source is going to be. Hopefully we'll be able to find a way to get them health care. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so supportive and signed on to Rep. Nathanson's bill for UDH. It is looking at that innovative health care. If we can't get a body physically to them because of the ice or whatever obstacles are between there, how else can we get them health care? And if they can call on the phone, if they can get a nurse that may not be impacted on it, and somebody else can provide that health care and those resources, that's great. That's what that innovation fund's going to do, and that's what I'm looking at it for, is, okay, how can we take all the lessons learned from that, apply it to localized emergencies where we need that, and then go forward from there. So all the communications I've been having with the local communities, it's be prepared for yourself. Be prepared for 2 or 3 days, which most of us are. But once you get to that 4th day, that seems to be a demarcation when you run out of gasoline, maybe all the perishable food is now perished and you don't want it, you use all your non-perishable food. So what do we do in days 4, 5, and 6? And if we went on for 2 weeks, what does that look like? And there are a lot of things out and in that. So this is a great question, and it is something that is certainly on my mind. I'm having conversations with, and hopefully we'll be able to do something in the 25 session to really help support communities so they can respond to emergencies better.
I'd just like to highlight one thing that Charlie said there that I think my colleagues and the county and everybody should be advocating for is in these long-term care facilities, we really need to think about requirements to make sure they have backup generators already. You can't wait till you're out of power in a facility like that where people depend on having electricity for their equipment to survive, and have the power go out and no ability to do anything about it except call 911. Not an acceptable scenario. Whether we require it or figure out how to fund it for long-term care facilities, I really think that needs to happen for the protection of all people that are living in those sorts of facilities.
Great comments, thank you. Along those same lines, and I'm not sure any of you are going to have the answer, I know I don't, how much has the ice storm cost Lane County to date? And that question's posed by Katrina Browser.
There just happens to be a lifeline in the back. Steve Adams might be able to give us some type of a ballpark, since he works with the county, as to about how much we may be out.
Forgot about Steve, thank you.
Sorry.
$34 million was what was substantiated in the preliminary damages.
All right, thank you, Steve.
I'm not surprised with the level of carnage that was out there.
How much?
34 million.
34 million.
Yes. It's a big number. There's still cleanup, and there will be for quite some time. The next question is from Patricia Hine. How can we include Oregon's largest greenhouse gas emissions from logging into our state sector-based GHG inventory? As it is, we are overlooking a huge contribution with no accountability or plan to reduce per the governor's order. Thank you.
Well, let me take a stab at this. And reducing greenhouse gas emission is always an ongoing issue, from divesting off of fossil fuels to the Coal Act that we passed that I certainly signed on. As to the logging industry, there are a lot of different rules. That the funny thing about this is that I've been finding out that there are so many different rules. We got federal regulations that deal with this, and you got state regulations that deals with this as well. So it's an ongoing issue. I don't have the answer, but I will tell you that it's something that I continue to look at, because I think that we need to ensure that this space, our public lands and waterways, remain here without cost to the public for generations yet to come. And how we reduce greenhouse gas emissions and the inventory of that, we're seeing there is a way. I just haven't figured it out, to be honest with you. There is a way.
Well, I'll take a small crack at this one. This is a really complicated question. There's a lot of different opinions on what science really tells us about greenhouse gas emissions from the logging practices. Certainly, I think there could be some improvements in forest management that would make a huge difference on the amount of emissions from logging. There's also, I think, a great step forward, as we've had some bumps along the road with the Elliott Forest, and some of that was basically around being able to value the forest, not in terms of the lumber it can produce, but also in terms of the sequestration capacity of our forests. And that has a value in many markets, credit markets. that should be recognized when we look at these sorts of things. And when you try to value a forest based on its sequestration capacity, you need to look at that inventory of greenhouse gas emissions from forest practices, because the credits that would go onto a market like that for investors would want to you would have to identify and substantiate the actual sequestration and emission factors. And so I think moving into the future, we need to make sure our forests are able to be valued in such a way as to capture the value of carbon sequestration.
Just put a cap on that too. OSU has a project where they're doing scientific work in our Elliott Forest, and they're coming up with some good information on there. But like I said, it's evolving over time, and I do agree sequestration is key. How do we get everything done? It's science, and but here's one thing: we cannot sell or privatize the Elliott Forest or any of our natural resources.
And I'll just sort of wrap up a little bit and pull up a little bit about climate. I think, apologies to the March Madness fans in here, but I'm a college football person, not basketball. And so sometimes when I take a look at what we have done over the last 5-8 years on climate in Oregon, we are very consistently moving the ball down the field 3 yards at a time, 5 yards at a time, a 1 yard rush. And, last session we had a climate resilient package where we focused on carbon sequestration and buildings, which are another big source of emission. So we'll have more efficient buildings. This session we funded the Healthy Homes program with more funding, which will help with, insulation and energy efficiency for homes. Those are important things, but they are 3 yard plays. They're not 40-yard Hail Mary passes. And so as we start to think, and truly, the only way to really solve climate is federal and international involvement. That's the only way we really score a touchdown. But Oregon, I've been proud of the work we've done to continue to advance policy and budget work over the last few years. And we're now in a position where, we have 9-10 months to plan for 2025. And what are the next big moves on climate? Are there any 10-20 yard passes that we have left in this state? Or are we going to continue these 3 or 4 yard plays that are very important and that do move the needle? And we're plugging away at them. So this is a spot for us to be able to reflect a bit and do some agenda setting for 2025.
Speaker, it sounds like you're describing a 42 dive or a quarterback keeper.
We got to figure, and honestly, it'll be a community process with stakeholders to figure out with the environmental organizations and others, what should that play really be? Because I have some thoughts, but I am one person, and so that's the beauty of this pause before the long session is we have time to plan.
Great. Our next question, and I apologize, first name is Brenda, I just can't read the last name. Oh, thank you. City of Eugene, Lane County, and LCC have all stepped up for a world-class pickleball facility at Lane Community College. Will Rep. Holvey retiring?
Is he going to play pickleball? Is that the question? Are you taking a pickleball?
And
Officiating or what?
what's the likelihood of legislative support for the pickleball facility at LCC? Is that close?
Well, it's sort of directed at me, I guess. I know Nancy's a big pickleball advocate. We saw pickleball come up for, a proposed funding. It did not get funded. Me personally, I have a bad knee, so I doubt if I will be playing pickleball. There's a lot of interest in that, and, it does take advocacy, and when we look at projects around the state, it's also on a bipartisan committee. I have a co-chair in the Capital Construction Subcommittee. Fred Girard is a Republican out of the Santiam Canyon area. And, you know, we take input from communities all around the state and listen to what the communities want. And I know there's a lot of controversy around baseball, for example. There was a package of baseball that was being advocated for from both Lane County and the Hillsborough area. And we did put bonding together to add some $7.5 million for here. But it is last dollar in, which means that the communities have to come up and support that for them to get that bonding. And so when you use bonding, it's not coming right out of your general fund, which is different, because I know somebody was talking about, you know, why didn't some of these higher ed programs get funded instead of baseball? Well, baseball wasn't funded with general fund monies, and you can't bond programmatic agency or activities. Bonding is on capital assets. And so that is difficult because we have to listen to everybody in the legislature and a lot of different communities to make decisions on what gets funded and what doesn't. And this year we did a little bit more art and recreation because we didn't do very much of that in the long session. And the short session is really condensed as well. We don't have near the capacity that we normally do. So, you know, it's all a balance. And pickleball did not get funded. There was some opposition to pickleball. And that's just sort of the way it came out. In the future, I think some of our legislators will continue to advocate for that, and if you're a big advocate, you need to advocate as well with your legislators around the state, really.
And I'll just add some budget context. So, as I said in my opening remarks, the vast majority of the budget work we do is in the long session. So, you know, we did, most of our budget decisions are made then because we have to set the budget for the next few years and balance the budget. We happened to have a slightly favorable revenue forecast right before the short session, so we had a little bit of extra funding than we were expecting to have to make some additional budget investments. And the priorities had to be housing and homelessness and behavioral health care and addiction treatment. I will say, I did the math, and we got 10 times more in budget requests for capital projects specifically than we had funding available. So there were absolutely things on that capital request list that are amazing projects and great, and will probably have a better shot next year because we just had such a limited slice of funding available. So I would say pickleball, you know, just in general, will have a better chance of success in a long session. In the 2022 short session 2 years ago, we had an influx of federal money from the American Rescue Plan Act that meant we could spend a lot more money in a short session. That's not the normal situation for us, and we're sort of returning back to normal budgeting practices post-pandemic.
I feel like I better jump in since I was mentioned. Don't any of y'all try to contact me to be your pickleball partner, because I don't even play pickleball. But when I heard about this project, which is what, 3 years ago now maybe, when I had a really early meeting with some of the advocates when they were in the early days of planning, I was immediately sold on the project, and let me tell you why. Because it relates to public health and community health. It's about the social and mental and physical well-being of people throughout all different age groups. And that was one of the main reasons why I supported it. It's important to have lifelong activities, and this was a good one. It also was a good project for our local economy because the facility that's being contemplated would be a draw for regional tournaments. And so there would be people coming to the area and staying overnight for tournaments. And that was a good idea too.
Rep. Conrad.
Thank you.
More pickleball.
Well, I'll just talk real quick. You know, just from my perspective. So again, kind of reiterating some of the comments I made before. We get so many project requests throughout the district. You know, for my district, I could easily outline 15 projects that people want money for at various times. And so just speaking for myself, I've got to go through and do some sort of filtering. If I'm going to put my time, effort, and energy in advocacy, I want some success. I want to be able to get some people some money. So I've got to do my own evaluation of the projects and figure out what am I going to push, what is likely to be funded. And so much of that depends on what the other conversations are. And like Rep. Holtby said, there are sometimes certain projects, because they haven't been, types of projects haven't been funded, maybe there's a higher likelihood, or maybe there's some other tangential aspect to it that makes it go forward. So even sitting here right now, I support the pickleball, but I also have a project up in Blue River called The River that they're looking for some funding for, and I met with folks down in Cottage Grove about the Cottage Grove Carousel, and they might be looking for some funding coming up in the next long session. So even taking 3 regional facility that, for entertainment that will improve the economy, that the community support, I already have 3 on my list. And if all of them are going to be asking for $4 million or whatever that might be, that's all hypothetical, where am I going to put it? What is most likely to be successful? And so how can I advocate for that? So I've got to do some filtering. So there's support, and then there's a lot of support in trying to get those things done. And so from my seat, the way that I do it, it can be difficult. And there's some times that I've had to tell people, I'm going to put my energy and effort into these for, you know, whatever reason I was advocating for. For me, it's local infrastructure and wildfire and emergency management. That's where I put a lot of my time, effort, and energy, is trying to really help those. But I support these projects. If I get an opportunity, absolutely, I'll be jumping on board, trying to push them and get them to go forward.
I'll just finish up with what Charlie said just a little bit there, you know, and what Julie said as well. You know, the short session is not normally one where we fund new projects, new programs. Nearly never happens. It just is out of the ordinary. The ARPA money made that a little bit different, and people now expect more from us in that short session. It's just not there. But one of the things we did that I worked with Charlie on and the county here was to get $900,000 for the Bear Mountain County Emergency Communications and equipment to enable, you know, some of our fire districts to actually communicate with each other in a more timely manner when we are having emergencies. Really important project, and I was happy to work with Charlie to get that one across the finish line.
While we're talking local investments, probably worth it to mention some of the other ones from this session. So I already mentioned the $6 million to the city of Eugene for infrastructure. We also allocated an additional $1.5 million to Homes for Good for their Ollie Court project out on Chambers and 13th. That is an affordable housing program, a building that is co-located with early learning. So families, you'll have 2 and 3 bedroom units, so families can live there and have childcare on site and early preschool on site. We also awarded $4 million to Willamette Family, Inc. to expand a detox and residential treatment facility. There'll be 33 additional spaces for folks who are in crisis, suffering from addiction. So we're really excited about that project as well.
And
I'm sure there's a long list of things that people are tracking.
very little theater.
Very little, the Capitol, yeah, for sure.
And relief nurseries, and some semiconductor workforce training facility at the university.
And I'll tag in the couple more in my district that we're able to get funded, funding $1 million for Junction City for one of their wells. We got $3 million for Cottage Grove for a housing development project to help put in infrastructure, and then $1 million for Crestwell for one of their wastewater or their water treatment facilities. So.
U of O. At the U of O, some of the projects for the Friendly Hall, getting the money there for renovating it, as well as I know Civic Parks, which is where Kid Sports is, received some additional funding this cycle as well. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I think the point for us to make certain everyone understands, 2022 was very unusual in the sense of how much money came into the state of Oregon. For the very first time and the only time in my tenure as in the legislature, each member was given an allotted amount of money to basically come in with programs that they wanted to have funded. it set a new dynamic that everyone thinks, oh yeah, now we get to do this every time. It was a one-time shot. Each of us had, if I remember correctly, $2 million for the reps, and then two for us. So the other part is what Julie was saying as to how many requests we had for this time. 10 to 1. You just can't split the money up enough to get everyone something. And the pickleball, this is one of those scenarios, it's on the table. I would expect that it's going to see more reception in the 2025 when we have a larger one, because it is a community-based. It does have a lot of, let's say, positive influence in the sense of having tournaments there where you're having people traveling in, spending money, staying at hotels, going to restaurants. Those are things that help generate for small businesses here those opportunities. So we will be looking at those. You just can't get them all in the short session.
Thank you, and thank you, Brenda. Your question about pickleball really primed the pump. That was a great sharing of information. Very much appreciated.
And we do, I mean, I think we said this at our last town hall, but as a delegation, we do meet to coordinate all the asks that come from our region. So whether it's from the city or the county or the university or Very Little Theater, we try and coordinate so that we're maximizing our advocacy for the region.
Excellent. This next question is I think you've already answered it, but I'm going to float it out anyway. This is from Karen Sachs. Do you anticipate direct allocations being common moving forward?
Direct allocations,
Some. I think direct allocations oftentimes are used for a lot of different arenas when we have extra revenue to do that. I think that's what they mean by direct allocations. And that's just a matter of where our priorities are. As Julie said, this time around, we have a lot of behavioral health priorities that we're still going to need a lot more focus on. And housing will still remain a focus, but we have a lot of infrastructure needs. Those things are usually use of bonding, but when you get into like economic development, you're using lottery bonds sometimes or direct allocations from revenues. I think Very Little Theater is an example of that. That was a direct money allocation.
So knowing Karen, I feel like this question is probably, if we look at the housing space or the behavioral health care space, we are in a housing crisis and we need to get things built right away. So the legislature, when it comes to investments, we have, very broadly speaking, we have two options. You can say, I want this money to go to this specific project like Ollie Court so that it can get built more quickly and it doesn't have to go through the rigmarole of applying to a fund and getting, all the contracting done and all of that. So we can do direct allocations like that. Or we can say, Oregon Housing and Community Services, the agency, here's $500 million. You run the process to have grant applications and score these projects and get that money out the door. And so that is longer process, but probably a more rigorous decision-making process. So we are constantly in a place of trying to balance, we need this housing now, we need new detox beds now, and residential treatment beds now for folks who are suffering from addiction. And we also want to fund the agencies and make sure that they're running rigorous processes for decision-making. So we tried in this session and last session, there's always a balance between those two things. For this session, for behavioral health, the legislature ran a process to identify shovel-ready residential treatment facilities all across the state. Beds that could be added pretty quickly with an infusion of cash, direct allocation from the legislature. And so we have that list. And we have also, starting in 2021, put a huge amount of money into the Oregon Health Authority, help us more strategically expand beds across the state. So the investments we started making in 2021 are going to result in 1,000 new treatment beds coming online this year and next year. Big part of solving the problem. So I think that's the heart of that question, is how do we think about, saying this project gets this amount of money versus we're gonna give it to an agency who will run an application process and score those applications.
Direct instead of a pass-through.
Yeah, or a grant process or something like that. Yeah.
This next question is from Doyle Canning. The housing package was a major breakthrough, along with House Bill 4002. Can you discuss how the governor's legislative investments in both bills will benefit Eugene, and what comes next?
I guess I can start. So how, the housing package was, about $400 million in investments and policy changes that we passed this session. That built on the major package that was $2 billion that we passed last year. Again, the majority of our work in the long session. And so there were pieces of, the housing, package that, had policies to make it easy, reduce some red tape for housing developers. So saying like cities can't deny a housing development because the windows are a little bit too small or the facade is the wrong color. There was a piece of the housing package that had to do with land supply. So allowing an optional one-time bump out for cities of their urban growth boundaries if they can prove that they both need housing and need land for that housing, or to do land neutral swaps within the UGB. And then there were pieces around, as I said, around infrastructure. We've talked a lot about that. And investments in affordable housing, primarily land acquisition for affordable housing development. So that, and then from the homelessness perspective, we invested in homeless eviction prevention, so rental assistance, eviction prevention services, and funding to help maintain some of the shelters and navigation centers that have opened the last few years. So Eugene and Lane County will get a piece of all of that funding that we talked about. I specifically mentioned the $6 million for Crow Road because that was a direct allocation, but the other funding, generally runs through a process. So we will definitely benefit on that front.
Thank you for everything. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, my staff did a little research to make sure that I was correct. I think that said that Eugene received Lane County about $65 million for emergency shelter, and Lane County Solutions to emergency respite and community supported shelters required more nimble funding, broader definition of emergency housing from HUD. And also Commissioner Pat Farr, who's out there in the crowd, has been calling on this for years. How do you expand the need for more behavioral health stability centers? I think we started one out on River Avenue some years ago that we took a look. How do we expand those projects? Thanks to Commissioner Farr for his work in that area. Safe sleep zones and areas and stuff are also a part of that. But we know that the need is still out there. Thanks for, talking about Willamette families, some of the others that benefit. Actually, Eugene and Lane County did quite well this session. When you think about everything in aggregate terms about the money, the fundings, and the direct funding stuff to support these projects.
I forgot that the second part of that question was what's next. And so on housing specifically, housing and homelessness are going to continue to be one of the top issues that we have to focus on. These are not problems that are going to be solved overnight. We've really been, it's been a huge emphasis of the legislature for the last 5 to 6 years. That said, the governor last year created an entity called the Housing Production Advisory Council, which is a group of folks who actually build housing in the state and manage things related to housing. And they came up with a long list of recommendations for how to amp up the supply of housing in this state in December. So just 6 weeks before the short session. Most of the ideas on that list were not ready to be introduced and passed in a 35-day session. I think some of them are very promising. Others will need a little bit more work. And so that's the job of this year, is to work through those recommendations and figure out what is going to be passed next year.
I'd like to add an additional point of view. Not that I disagree with any of that, but there are some other things I think about also when I think about investing in housing or how can we improve the housing situation. Not everyone is going to own a single-family home. And at some point in their life, they will not live in a single-family home, perhaps. They'll be in a rental. In a city like Eugene, half of the residences are rentals, either apartments or homes. I think it's still true. When I was on the city council, I was tracking the vacancy rate.
52%.
50, okay. So I think a lot about how do we make housing affordable for everybody. I worry a lot about the situation for renters. That's why I've worked really hard on a couple of bills that have turned out to be extremely controversial. And the Rental Property Owners Association has been concerned with some of my innovative ideas. I haven't been able to get them passed yet, and I will not give up. In addition to that, though, I think it's very important that when we look at the spectrum of housing that we're providing, that some housing really needs to be housing with services. When we're talking about emergency and temporary and short-term or transitional housing, very often, if not almost all the time, the people in that housing need some sort of services. And sometimes that means mental health treatment. Sometimes it means drug or alcohol counseling or treatment. Sometimes it means other kinds of services. I think we're not going to solve the problems of homelessness until we ensure that the housing that we're providing for people who are without a home at that time, we won't solve it unless we are also providing appropriate services to help them then make permanent changes and be able to help themselves going on. I also think that it's important to figure out how we can invest in upgrading rental housing so that renters aren't spending more than they need to on energy. We need to do it for climate, and we need to do it for renters' budgets. We need to do weatherization at a minimum. And finally, I'm very pleased, projects that you've heard about in these town halls before. I'm really glad that we invested to help St. Vincent de Paul's program to build manufactured housing using local people and locally sourced materials to the greatest extent possible, and build it with a nonprofit a manufacturing facility. I'm really glad we did that, and I'm really glad that we're investing in helping places like Square One Villages, I hope they're not the only one, in doing other innovative approaches to housing, such as limited equity co-ops.
Rep. Conrad.
Thank you. One of the other bill that was listed in there is 4002. So that's the Measure 110 fix. So I agree with my colleagues on housing, and one of the things that really I think is embedded, and I appreciate that question, because it touches on how integrated everything is. I mean, that question in and of itself, it brings in public safety, it brings in healthcare, it brings in housing, and you know, also part of that's going to be the jobs and those opportunities. But there are so many things that we are trying to work through in the state to bring all these things together, because it is a very complex system and it's really integrated. So some of this includes, you know, civil commitment processes, and when can friends and family help get somebody that needs addiction treatment into a facility. 4002, I know there are lots of different opinions on the recriminalization side of it, but one of the things that it does, it opens up opportunities for people to get treatment. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can utilize some of that housing. Once we get some people some stability, once we can remove some of those stresses, then we can get them to that point where, okay, let's get them some housing. Let's work on getting them some employment. Let's work on getting some of that progress going forward so that they can have that full life. For me, you know, my focus, one of my focuses is on the juvenile side of this. So with the funding that we've got and that we were able to get in 4002, and it's the corollary funding bill, which I think is 1530, that has a lot of these shovel-ready programs and some of the other programs like Nurse Family Partnerships got funding, and then again with the Relief Nursery getting funding. This is how we help the youth early on so that we can get them so that when they're adults, they've got some housing that's affordable and available. They've got some work and employment opportunities. And if there are any co-occurring addiction or mental health treatment facilities, we're going to have that ability to help them and to help move them along for that progress. And because a lot of this is generational, the housing, the wealth side of it, but also a lot of the genetic components to mental health and addiction. And so the sooner we can do these and tie all these things together, the better we're going to be going forward and advancing that. So it's huge, the fact that we got 4,002, the fact that we do have now another door open and available, but it's not going to be the only one. We need to keep creating as many doors as we can to get people the help that they need.
I'm going to follow up on that. So 4,002, the one thing we have to keep in mind is that actually is carrying out what Measure 110 set out to do, and that was to get behavioral health, get addiction services to individuals in need. Now we've opened up a door, and from my perspective, we've gone in a different direction than what the voters wanted with Measure 110. We've recriminalized a user amount of narcotics. As a prosecutor for the last 35 years in this state, I can tell you that we need to be looking and focusing on what other countries have done and had more success. The numbers that we saw for Measure 110 was actually showing positives. The problem that we had was it wasn't allowed to be implemented. It basically took 18 months for the state of Oregon to start getting money out the door to these programs in the communities. But the data was showing us that they were, in fact, being beneficial. And we're now going to actually put into another perspective. So I hope that everyone keeps in mind that there's multiple ways of getting to the same objective. Yes, there are some individuals who need to have that pressure of going into the criminal justice system to get assistance. But the vast majority of individuals have, in fact, responded without that. As long as you have, and this is the part that is good about 4002, it does, in fact, get more money, behavioral health, more money for housing, because stability in someone's life is paramount for them to be able to address issues that they have on a personal level. And so I'm looking forward to seeing us staying with this, meaning putting more resources into it. This isn't a one-time fix. We have to move forward. The war on drugs, we have over 50 years of showing what that experience is. We only had 3 years with 110. Portugal, which is the model that they used for those who supported 110, and I'll be the first to tell you, I did not support 110 when it was on the ballot because I didn't like how they took money away from other programs to fund that program. But what we learned in Portugal is that they took 2 years before they passed their national law to decriminalize, to set up the infrastructure that was necessary. So when they flipped the switch on, they had places to put people in the sense of moving them into health and help. The issue that we have now is that we're trying to catch up with where we were negligent and not providing for that. So only having 3 years into it, I would have loved to have seen us put a sunset clause, an opportunity to take away the recriminalization of people who are addicted, and saying that the only way you're going to get services is that we're going to put you in jail. We don't do that with alcohol. That is the #1 drug that we deal with in the criminal justice system. And we don't threaten someone who's an alcoholic that if you don't go to treatment, you're going to jail. So please keep these things in mind of how we can actually get better results, treat people with some dignity as to what we envision, and make certain that we actually give them the opportunity and the support in the community. Because if we address these issues on this level, we actually have people that become good neighbors, people who can take care of themselves, provide for their families, and not be a burden in the criminal justice system or in the social service system.
The next question is from Becca Keating. We've heard about your legislative accomplishments and bipartisan bills you've passed. Thank you. But what didn't get across the finish line this session?
I'll start with, go ahead. No, I don't want to, no, please.
I was gonna talk about House Bill 4130. Okay, why don't you go there? You're on the healthcare committee.
So I'll give you my thoughts on House Bill 4130, which is one of the big ones, and I'd be curious to hear what Rep. Fahey has to say about it. So House Bill 4130, it's the corporatization of medical bill that Rep. Bowman worked incredibly hard on. He was working on it through the fall. We had at least one informational hearing before the committee during Ledge Days. I think it was September or November. And that was one that was tough because of how complex the economy is and how complex the business structure of all of our providers, our hospitals, our nonprofits, and what do they look like. And there is a vast array of business models. And I absolutely support the concept. I am concerned about the merger and acquisitions that are going on in the healthcare sector. You know, the people that I've spoken to, the doctors that I've had a chance to talk to that have worked for corporations, it reduces the patient quality care. It's, 10 minutes in and out. It is, very different than going and seeing your doctor that has time to actually treat you and talk to you. And that is very concerning because it reduces patient care. And when they're, beholden to their shareholders, they're not making medical decisions necessarily in the patient's best interest. And that causes me some great concern. And we need to absolutely address that. As Rep. Nathanson has worked so hard these past few years on PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, it's the same thing, mergers and acquisitions in that space. Now everything is vertically integrated. So it's, your insurance company is your PBM, is your pharmacy. You're going to go pay all of them money. And there you go. It all goes basically to the same corporation. So that's a concern. But with that, I voted no on it. I voted no on it both in the committee and I voted no on it both on the floor. And the key piece that we had trouble coming across is how to deal with existing business structures. And can we tell a current business that you have to sell? You have to sell your shares. You have to reorganize your business. And that is not the place for the government. And that's the part for me. That's the one key piece that we need to figure out. Are we just going to grandfather all of our current businesses in there? Or is there a different middle ground? Rep. Bowman in his bill, he negotiated to a 7-year runway. So 7 years would be the pathway before businesses would have to reorganize. I still have great concerns about whether it's our responsibility to tell businesses you have to change your structure. And I don't know what the answer to that is. But I love the concept. I have no doubt that he's going to be bringing that back in 25. And I would love to see what he has, and I'd love to work with him on that interim so that we can get to a point that we can pass it, because it absolutely needs to pass, but we need the words on the paper to actually accomplish that goal without going directly to a lawsuit. It does no good if it goes to the courts and it gets stayed for umpteen years, so.
Yeah, Representative Conrad did a great job of talking about that bill. The basic idea is Oregon currently has a law about, Representative Conrad talked about the corporatization of medicine that we're seeing. So like Optum coming in and purchasing Oregon Medical Group, where I am a patient. And so we have a law right now that says, if you have a medical practice, it needs to be owned by doctors. It needs to be so that the patient care is always number one, and the financial concerns are, not at the top of that list. But unfortunately, our current law has some loopholes in it that allow for different financial arrangements where you're effectively owned by a, outside entity. And so this bill, this session, was intended to close some of those loopholes. It was a big, thorny policy topic. It passed the House and died in the Senate. And it was, just a really hard thing to get across the finish line in 5 weeks. So he is going to bring it back, and we'll take it on again next year. But that was the one bill that came to mind immediately on that question about what didn't pass.
I've been talking with Representative Bowman just in the last couple of weeks about one particular aspect of his bill. I think it's page 20, line 45, where it starts.
Just off the top of her head.
I was just looking at it. There's a part of the bill that addresses what's called non-compete agreements and non-solicitation. Highly technical, a bunch of legal stuff that basically tells a doctor, if you leave, doctors have been required to sign contracts that have this language. If you leave this clinic or this practice or this group, if you leave, you can't go work somewhere else within X number of miles or within the county. And you can't tell your patients that you're going to leave, and you can't tell your patients after you left where you are. That's the non-solicitation part. I'm outraged, and that's part of the problem. I think I'm really trying to tackle the problem of what's going on with people contacting me and others at this table about they can't find a doctor. They've been with Oregon Medical Group, and Oregon Medical Group can't reassign them to another doctor because they don't have another doctor, and now they have no one to see. I hope we don't find that we are literally on the verge of an access to healthcare emergency in Lane County, but it's looking bleak. I'm very concerned about that. So I'm really digging into this one specific part of the bill. I've talked with Representative Bowman. It's very possible that individually and separately, I will have a bill that addresses non-compete and non-solicitation parts of contracts, so that if there's a problem getting another big comprehensive bill across the finish line, maybe we can tackle this one part, because this is a really lousy way to run healthcare.
I was, two bills we had, so I was 1 for 2. The one that did get passed was a bill that direct health care and fair compensation for hospital interpreters who are contracted out. I want to thank my colleagues on the Senate, I'm on the House side for moving it forward. That was a struggle, uphill, boulder. But the one that I thought would have been really easy was a bill to provide once college and university students upon registration in college in line with motor voter, and we did a bill last year, those that are enrolled or enrolled in a Oregon healthcare plan, they will automatically be registered voters. This bill was designed to enroll students, college students, and university students, when they register for classes, that they will automatically be enrolled as voters. Those that don't have a driver's license or state ID or anything like that are residents of Oregon and qualify for it, not out-of-state students. Very, very simple, but it seems that the thing that really kind of disappointed me this year is that just about every policy bill wound up going to Ways and Means. And I don't understand that they were putting the fiscal on any and everything. That was a disappointment for me of this session. So disappointed in there, but you know, we'll go back at it again.
So I'm going to jump in too. I've always got a long list of bills that didn't make it. And, you know, bills that go to Ways and Means usually cost money, so you have to draft bills that don't cost money to avoid that process. But seriously, one of the bills I've been working on for a long time and passed the House once, but didn't make it in the Senate, and we, with Senator Brzezinski's help, tried to get it reinvigorated, is about wage theft. There's a lot of workers that don't fully get paid, and we have a very cumbersome wage claim process that is not user-friendly for the worker. And I believe it's around 60% of the wage theft, which means there's a lot of different ways that happens, is in the construction industry. And we had a bill specifically designed around that to ensure that workers get paid, and it always evolves around subcontractors and independent contractors and the wage claim process. We have a process that's 94% effective in prevailing wage scenarios, and trying to implement that in private projects seemed to be a smart idea, because only less than 50% of those claims ever come up. And frankly, workers give up after a couple of months, and it takes a couple of years sometimes to get a wage claim through the system. So it's really a big giant hole where people are not getting paid for the work they've performed. So that's a big one I hope comes back someday. Another big one in Oregon for consumers. You know, one of the ways the consumers are able to get remedies from different business practices is called the Unfair Trade Practices Act, which is under the purview of the Attorney General. There's one industry that is not subject to that process in the state of Oregon, and that's the insurance industry. So when we had all the wildfires, we saw that people were only able to get sometimes less than 50 cents on the dollar of the value of their properties. They can't even rebuild. There's many families now that have lost their homes due to wildfire that aren't haven't recovered and have no process or no way to recover because insurance industries have walked away. And it's a big problem, especially for some of those areas that are close to force. And I hope that someday we take a look at how we dealt with wildfire in the past. Another bill that I've been working on for a long time is trying to find some equity in timber taxation to fight wildfires. It used to be we had a severance tax on value, and industries used to pay 100% of the wildfire costs on their properties. Now they pay less than 20% of the wildfire costs on their own private properties. And the state income tax, our general fund, has to make up that difference, which takes money away from all the other programs that we would like to pass. And I hope one of those programs will be setting up food pantries at our community colleges and universities for students who don't have enough to eat. That needs to be done next session.
And I'll follow up with a couple, my two bills. One of them I didn't take forward because we actually had let's say a positive that came out, and we set up a task force to deal with suicide and gun violence prevention. But I'll tell you that with the bill that I will be bringing back this next, in 2025, as an independent bill, if we don't bring it forward through this task force, because Senate Bill 1503 is the one that sets up this task force for the suicide and gun violence prevention, is dealing with impulse purchase of firearms. I am a firearm owner. I've owned guns for over 50 years of my life. But I also understand the responsibility and the necessities. The data clearly shows us that individuals are being hurt seriously or fatally wounded and are killed based on someone that is acting in the heat of passion at the time, and they will buy a firearm and within hours commit the act. So what this bill would do, and what I expect the task force to be able to address, is have a delay that if you go in to purchase a firearm at your local gun store, wherever it may be, that there would be at least a 72-hour wait before you actually would receive the gun. We have a backlog currently on our background checks, so you have to take those things in consideration. Clearly, if someone has waited 4 months to get their firearm released to them going through a background check, they shouldn't have to wait the 72 additional hours. But the data clearly shows that individuals committing suicide or domestic violence actions, many of those individuals have in fact used the ability to purchase a gun immediately to carry out that act. Paul brought out the thing on wage theft. I told my leadership that I would not move that forward after we filed it, understanding that we are in a short session. It will be coming back in 2025 because this is a scenario. As the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I cannot understand how we are not taking actions to ensure that people who are working day in and day out aren't getting their fair wage, and that you have contractors who are basically stiffing these individuals. And what this would do is say that if I'm a general contractor and I'm hiring 10 different subs to do the work, you're going to stand responsible for the actions of your subs. And you're not going to be able to say, well, I paid the sub and so I shouldn't be held accountable. You know, you should be doing just like everyone else does, due diligence in who you hire, so those individuals who they hire are actually going to be treated fairly and get their wages for the work they did.
Thank you, Becca, for the question, and thank you, all of you, for a really robust and informative discussion. The next question is from Kellyanne Stiles. What has been done this year to help survivors of sex trafficking? They need extra help to reunite with family and to rebuild their lives.
I will start off. I don't believe there was anything done during this short session regarding that area of concern. You followed a lot of the work that we have done in the past. I expect that we'll continue to see more and more clearly what we need to do, and this is kind of goes back ironically to the housing issues of being able to have a safe place for individuals that are being extracted, and I do mean extracted from this trade, to be able to have a safe place, have the services that they need to help them integrate back into their community and getting them reacquainted with their family if that's appropriate. Some cases it's not. In some cases, the individual was abused and taken advantage of within their own family structure. So there's a lot of stuff there that's packed in, but clearly we need to make certain that we're doing everything we can to help identify these individuals and help them remove themselves, because in many of these cases, they don't know how to do it. They can't do it on their own, and we need to be able to step up and help and assist them, because it's like slavery. And it's with a lot of trauma, and the reality is those individuals are going to need ongoing help in the future, and it's better to get them in a healthy environment so they can hopefully come back and re-energize their own life and feel valued and have the ability to participate in our communities.
We did pass one bill about this topic, and I was trying to look for some of the funding allocations as well, but the bill we passed, House Bill 4140, it's a little complicated from a budgeting standpoint, but what it does is it directs the Department of Justice to include in their future agency budget requests funding for child advocacy centers, the Survivor Housing Fund Grant Program, and the Oregon Domestic and Sexual Violence Services Fund. So those latter two are programs that provide support and resources for survivors, and the first is specifically related to children who are survivors. So that will stabilize the funding sources. Instead of every 2 years having to come back and get a special allocation, it should be a more stable funding approach. And then I am almost certain we also did some one-time appropriations for survivors of child abuse, domestic violence, and sexual assault, but I don't have that at the tip of my fingernails, so.
And I will say that there was another bill that's not directly about sex trafficking, human trafficking as such, but there's a bill that we did out of our Business and Labor Committee that empowers BOLI to actually enforce child labor laws, which oftentimes go unnoticed and kind of overlap sex trafficking sometimes, unfortunately. Previously, BOLI really wasn't able, though on paper they could bring a child labor case forward, but as soon as the federal government was made aware of it, the federal government takes over, and then BOLI had no resources and had no ability to issue penalties or fines or even do much of anything in enforcement at all around child labor. And so we passed a bill that basically disconnected their requirements to let the feds take completely over these cases, and that the state could move these cases forward through BOLI by themselves, and enabled a structure that allowed them the resources to do that. So that will have a little side impact on sex trafficking, I'm sure, as well, but just generally watching out for child labor is something that BOLI's wanted to do for a long time and has not been able to be effective because of some of the federal requirements that were in statute.
There's one thing I'd like to add. It's not directly about trafficking, but I believe there's a relationship. I was contacted by some policy and legal people from the National Center on Sexual Exploitation to have a conversation last week. I spoke with them for quite a while. Based on that conversation, it's very likely that I'm going to be recommending to the committee that I co-chair, the Committee on Information Technology, that we draft a bill similar to what several other states are considering right now. It's going to be called, very likely, the Child Device Protection Bill. Right now, it's possible for children to have these kinds of devices and have access to some really deep, dark sites that include pornography and other really bad stuff. And there is a way that will comply with freedom of speech and the U.S. Constitution, but there will be a way, we believe it can be upheld, to make sure that devices that are being used by children don't have access to those kinds of websites, because I think that's another way that someone could try to get into or reach into a child's activities and start to connect with them. And I hope to bring that next year.
Okay, while our legislators were responding, I received a very important note here from a very large carrier pigeon. We are moving to the closing statements now from our legislators, and if we could start the opposite direction with Representative Holvey, and I'll say work north.
Closing statement. Wow, that's a big opportunity. Well, I just appreciate the community, especially my particular district, but really the whole community, for allowing me to represent them for the last 20 years and supporting me through a lot of different ups and downs. And I've really, it's just been an honor to focus on legislation and focus on investments and focus on things that matter to our communities. And I've worked with a lot of legislators in the last 20 years, and I feel real confident that the legislature will continue to serve the interests of Oregonians. I've been the Speaker Pro Tem under, I think, 3 speakers now, and it's been a real honor to do that as well, trying to support our process and the administration of the legislature in general. And I feel like I've, been able to accomplish a lot of things and met a lot of people. Certainly I have my failings here and there, but I've really tried to stay focused on improving the lot of Oregonians in whatever their endeavors may be. And thank you all for participating and voting.
Thank you. I enjoy these because I always enjoy hearing what my fellow colleagues have to say as well, and the different perspectives. And I always take something away. And I appreciate the depth of knowledge and the different experiences, the different occupations that we all bring here, and the way that we all work to represent our districts and the various needs. And we did a lot this last session. We did a lot of wonderful things. We did a lot of really good things. There were some things left on the table. And there were some things that we got a toehold, and behavioral health is one of them. We did good, but we have to make this what we do every session. Every time we make an investment, we evaluate what we did. Are we on the right path? Do we need to make any course corrections? And then keep reinvesting in it. We failed for so long, so many decades, to do this, and we need to keep going forward with that. But that's not the only area that we need to focus on, but it is a critical area. For my district's emergency management, I still have Blue River that they're trying to recover, and to come up with a better recovery plan statewide so that any other communities, they don't have to go through all the things that Blue River's had to go through over the past few years. And we get just a sense of that with the ice storm and the impact that it had on Springfield. Some of our local communities and areas were not ready and prepared, and now they're thrown into this mix. So emergency management certainly is an area of focus going forward, and it's going to always be that way. And there's always room for improvement. The other thing is, as we talked about, because particularly with the housing side of things and how important housing is, it's infrastructure. We can build all the houses we want, but if we can't get power and water to them, what are we doing other than building structures? We need to invest in our communities and our cities, both the unincorporated populated areas, which I have a number of them in my district, but also our smaller cities, Lowell and Oak Ridge, and some of these cities with 30 and 40-year-old infrastructure. They can't come up with $10 million. You know, some of my smaller districts, Dexter Sanitary District, Rat River Valley Water District, you have 100 people that you serve water for, you're not going to come up with $500,000. So working to help out those communities for things that impact people daily. And fortunately, we've got a great county here that is getting involved with me and helping me figure out how can we actually help people? How can we get out there and do that? And so we'll continue, and I'll continue focusing on that. And the other side of it, I've talked a lot about community because that is really important to me and how we go about doing this, but as volunteer firefighters, again, it is a very specific niche, but the local communities, they're losing volunteer firefighters. How can we help incentivize that? How can we get our local community members to want to be volunteer firefighters and get the rewards of helping your communities, being on call? Of course, you get a little bit of adrenaline rush, I assume. Counselor Groves, being a firefighter, you may have had an adrenaline dump or two, but how can we get people to want to help? How can we as a state incentivize people so that we can give them a stipend, pay for their gas, do those kind of things? And I have a red sign saying I have to stop, so thank you very much.
Didn't know they had the red sign back there.
First, I want to thank my staff, Olivia and Spencer, who are here, and all the other staff who are here for helping pull together these town hall meetings. And thank you all. I want to say thank you to counselor and friend Randy Groves for the work you've done here today. And I want to spend a minute talking about my colleague, Representative Paul Holvey. I'm going to give you a little background because a few of you are too young to remember this. Oregon traditionally had supplied about 50% of all the grass seed used around the whole world, grass seed that's used on soccer fields and residential lawns and golf courses. The grass seed farmers in the Willamette Valley were burning their fields after the summer harvest to cut down on diseases and insects. Field burning on the west side of the Interstate 5 one year caused a chain reaction accident. In the summer of 1988, thick smoke from a burning field caused a 21-car pileup. It was south of Albany. More than 10 vehicles caught fire. 37 people were injured and at least 7 died. People were becoming increasingly angry and increasingly worried about this in the decade leading up to what I want to tell you is this really impressive memory I have of Representative Holvey. Paul had been fighting valiantly to stop field burning with the strong opposition, as you can imagine, of the agriculture community. It was in my second term, the year was 2009, and my memory is still crystal clear as Representative Holvey stood up on the floor of the House fighting for his bill to stop field burning. Several of us, I think, were literally holding our breath as those last votes came up on the vote board, and Paul succeeded. Thank you, Paul. The takeaway for all of you is that Representative Holvey has been a great role model, showing us how to dig into an issue, learn about it, study it, draft a bill, and then fight for it. You've done well.
I would just add to that, I think we in the legislature have been very lucky to have Representative Holvey, but I also just want to say our community has been really lucky to have him. I think we've really benefited from his experience and his expertise over the years and his sense of humor. And
Really?
for those who don't know, he has a very dry sense of humor, and he deploys it viciously in the legislature. But I, as a first-term member, I served on the Business and Labor Committee that Representative Holvey chaired, and learned so much from him about how to manage a committee, how to manage a bill, and how to keep my questions short. Really just echo all of the appreciation for Representative Holvey. In terms of wrapping up this session, we didn't talk as much about behavioral health as I thought we might, and didn't get like really direct specific questions about it, but I do just want to say, there's been a lot of conversation about, and a lot of attention about whether the public use of drugs or the possession of small amounts of drugs should be a misdemeanor or a violation. What should the penalty be? And there was some pretty robust disagreement, even amongst those of us at this dais, about how that should be handled and how we should move forward in the legislature with that. And I thought that was good and healthy, and that we make better policy decisions as a legislature when there is disagreement. So I'm proud of how we managed through that conversation. And also just want to say that piece of the conversation got an outsized amount of attention, and the work that we did this session will invest in expanding access to behavioral health facilities. So building more facilities, training up more workers to staff those facilities. It will also invest in prevention, because that's really the only way we're going to get out of this cycle to begin with, is particularly invest in our youth prevention. And then addressing the supply of drugs in our community. So making it easier to prosecute drug dealers and giving law enforcement the tools they need to confiscate drugs. So it was a very wide-ranging and sweeping package. I also particularly liked there was a piece of it about making sure that people who are in jails and prisons can have access to medication-assisted treatment. Medication-assisted treatment is the most effective form of treatment for opioid use disorder. And if someone has committed another crime and is in jail, having the ability to have access to that, I think, is really important. So it was a pretty sweeping package that took many months to put together. Proud of the work. It was, that and housing and homelessness were our two big pieces for this session. So appreciate all of my colleagues and everything that was done to get us there.
First, let me say to my good friend, colleague, and Mr. Pro Tem, it's always been a pleasure. I know that whenever I had opportunity to come to you and stuff, that you're going to give it all your best and stuff. And if it was something that was far too rich, you say, it's far too rich. So I get that. But some important measures that you helped me specifically get across, Senate Bill 420, that was a hard one, and I wouldn't have gotten it done without you on the House side. So your name should be written all on there, and even though you didn't put your name on it, I guess because if it failed, you didn't want to be identified with it, but but you got it done, and it is a huge thing for apprenticeship programs throughout this state. It's caused a lot of people to get a lot of jobs quickly. I have been having, this was for me, it was a bipartisan session. We did do some things for children of abuse. Senate Bill 1579, which was overwhelming, passed in the House and the Senate. One had Senator Tim Knopp brought forward, and I carried with him on the floor. This was dealing with children. It was child advocacy centers, and I think that the bill calls for appropriation over $27 million to get this thing off, to establish these centers where children who have been abused can go to a location where they can receive mental health care, they can receive all substance abuse care, all of these things they can do, and if necessary, contact with the higher authorities to go out, seek, and find perpetrators that have abused these children. That was a big thing when, it passed overwhelmingly on the House and the Senate side. So that was a big thing. And so we did do some work in that area. This was, I characterize it, fast and furious, because a lot of things happened. But I am so honored to be amongst the Lane County delegation. We all pulled together, and we got a lot of good things done. So Oregon, Eugene, you should be really proud of the work that was put. Everybody walked out with scars this time, so we're just not smiling. Everybody took a few beatings, but we all came out of this because it was all about you. So thank you for this opportunity to serve.
So thank you very much. Being a prosecutor, I always like to go last. So first, I want to just say thank you to Will Gray. Will is an intern in my office. He is at the university doing graduate work. And Randy, for you being willing to come here and MC, they're really important. And for all of you that are here today, taking time on a Saturday afternoon to be here means a lot. And I think each of you know how important it is for everyone to be engaged and be part of the process to make our communities better and having the system in place. You know, as they say, civics and politics isn't a spectator sport. And you've demonstrated to me today that you are here. I hope that we can do more, as we've heard as to the bill on civics for youth, getting them more engaged so they understand the importance of being part of the community is to actually participate in these type of forums. And then to Paul. Paul stepped up in 2004 when I had the opportunity to move to the Senate to represent Senate District 4. Paul came in and took my place as the representative for what used to be, when I started, House District 40, that became House District 8 through a change in the redistricting. And Paul and I have had the opportunity to work very, very close together. I will definitely miss him. You've already heard some of the accomplishments that he's had. And what I can tell you is that he is a believer in the system. He put everything he could into the system, and he always, always worked his hardest to make certain that he delivered the best he could. And the field burning was something that I had the opportunity to work with him side by side on a lot of the work, and I knew that I was going in the right direction, not only because it was the right thing to do, but I knew Paul had done his homework, and he does and this is the dry humor part, he has the ability to do a cross-check on many individuals and their statements they make, saying that this is going to bankrupt everyone. It didn't. In fact, we found other ways to use those materials that did in fact benefit without having all of the health issues that have come forward and was demonstrated for that. So Paul, thank you very, very much. And I'm really happy that you have represented me and Susie as our representative for the last 20 years. And I know that we'll continue our friendship. And I have already told him that I'm going to bring him on as a part-time pay. He says he's not going to take it, so maybe he's volunteering. But a lot of the work that he's done in the past is we're going to continue. And I've made a commitment to him on some of the bills that you've heard today that we're going to do the best we can in 2025 to move them forward and get them across the finish line. So Paul, yours.
Before I move into some closing housekeeping comments, I want to thank all of you for your time today and the work you do on our behalf up in the legislature. I feel very comfortable and confident and pleased that we have all of you representing us. And you do a phenomenal job, as evidenced by the work that you accomplished in this short legislative session. So if you'd join me in a round of applause. I also want to thank the staff that put in a lot of time and effort to make this possible today. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to be here. I want to thank Lane County for opening up this facility one more time, just to make sure you know we appreciate it, and this is a great venue for these town halls. I also want to let you know that if you submitted a question card that we did not get to today, your legislator is going to respond to you with an answer. So it won't go unanswered. It just obviously time wouldn't allow us to get through the complete list of questions, but we did get close. The last thing is, when we conclude here in about 10 seconds, I'd like to invite all of you to come up front and get your photograph taken with our legislators, and I'm sure this will be something that Rep. Holvey might enjoy having next to his pickleball racket. So with that, thank you, and hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.